Um,
Speaking of Spotify, did you see the damn records Taylor Swift broke with that tortured poet?
oh, well, Taylor
Holy
Swift told everyone
hell.
about.
Holy hell.
Honestly, it's not even that great.
I
I
actually, it's more my style. Like
yeah, I like
some of
so
them
I
I
think
really
There,
like, some I
every
don't like, but like
majority of the
that's the one
songs
to
just have the
hear.
same riffs, the same speed, and I think it's boring.
I think the
The,
second
the
half
ones
is a
I
lot.
like a lot. Like the ones I like a lot, but the other ones could all be the same. Like lyrically, like if you, I'm just not. I like
I know
the
what you
music
mean, Kim.
more,
They all have the same mellow sort of vibe. But you know what
and
I will say is I do like that song with Post Malone.
I
Because I've
love
heard
that
it so
one.
many times. I think I've heard it.
I'm
I
okay
love
with
that
that
one.
one. I don't think it's that great, but I like it. I like Post Malone's part. I love Manuscript. I've played that song so many times. Welcome to Talk Like a Mother Parenting Autism Podcast. We are Jen, Kim, Rachel, and Jamie. Take a seat at our table as we share with hope, humor, and honesty. Hello, and thank you for taking a seat and joining us on this Monday for our No Reservations episode. This is our Parenting Autism series, which we thought would just be kind of a play on our new name and also just a way to talk about like little different things we have in our lives when you're parents of an autistic child or adult. I thought we would start off by maybe talking a little bit about what you wish you could tell people about your experience parenting. Obviously, for Rach and Jen, we mentioned last time, their only experience parenting has been with autism. For me and Kimmy, we kind of get to see variations of parenting. I think if you have multiple children, no matter what, every child's so different. But yeah, I'll start to kind of just give an example. Some things I wish people knew is that we're not purposely like isolating ourselves. The reasons we become more distant or we can't do certain things could be a myriad of things. Some of them it does feel purposeful as of like I don't want to sometimes hang out with people and their typical children when it reminds me of how different my child is. There's also instances where it's really difficult for us to do some of the things that people invite us to do. I had a friend when Jesse was a lot younger who would always invite us to the museum, and we went to the museum a lot, but we had to do it in a very particular way, in our way, where like Jesse kind of ran the show. And if we had to leave, we had to leave. Or if he's walking to the next exhibit, we're walking to the next exhibit because it just makes the outing easier for me. But just things like that, where it's like that would be hard to do with another group of people who didn't understand, or even other children who I wouldn't want to be like, hey, if you want to stare at this polar bear and my son's halfway across the room, I'm not going to force your kid to be halfway across the room. Things like that, where I often feel bad or I've lost a lot of like friendships or we don't see people as much because we've said no so much, but there's a lot of different reasons we do say no. So I don't know if that
That's
helps you guys. That's just like an example of like one thing that
hmm
I wish people knew.
And I wish people knew that they should still ask, even if it's no every time.
Yeah. And also like I would love sometimes because I feel like people have been very nice and they keep inviting and they keep inviting, but they don't ever necessarily come out and be like, okay, what would work for you to do? Like,
Mhm.
like if there's been points in our lives where it's like, okay, would you just come over here and hang out? Jesse might not play with your kid, just so you know, but I'll have plenty of toys and snacks or whatever. Or sometimes that's not the answer. But if someone was like, okay, what would you guys want to try to do together? And then that kind of, makes it easier.
I think it's just that expectation that people have is just not realistic for us to live up to. And it's also not realistic for us to them to live up to our expectation. Like I've had so many times where people would be like, "Oh, just come," and I'm like, "Well, I just don't know how she'll be," and they'll be like, "We'll help you, like it'll be fine," but then they don't help you, and it's not that like, and sometimes they can't even help you. Like if Alyssa's in a way,
Mhm.
like nobody else is gonna be able to like step in and help. Like it's just not gonna really be a thing. But it's just really hard, when you have that expectation of like someone's gonna be there and assist, like they said. I mean, I found out very quickly that just I don't think it's anyone purposely doing it. I don't think I just don't think they realize what would you say you're gonna help, what we're thinking, and then like what they're kind of like committing themselves to doing. Because like no, nobody expects them to like miss out on the time because of our child, but at the same time, it's like not a fun thing if you're in a different area, in a different room, in the parking lot, in the car, somewhere else than like where everybody else is. It's just to me, that's like the most isolating feeling in the world. Like I'd just rather be home in my own environment than kind of go through that. Now, obviously, I learned to be like, bring someone specifically that's just there to help me. Like, oh, my sister's gonna come and help me, or like Neil's gonna come and help me, or whoever like it possibly could be. And I know that we're probably not always realistic in what we're kind of expecting from other people at the same time, and they're also not realistic in like what we can do. So I just think that like is like a, and I think that we just tend to pull back sometimes from that. That's in my experience, at least.
I wish people understood that I'm making a million unspoken choices at the same time as I'm wagering everything. We're trying to be aware of a million different variables and possible triggers. I wish people understood that, whether they understand why or not, that I'm doing my best and it's for a reason. That it's not like optional. It's not so that you think something of my kid, whether that's less or more than you think she's capable of. It's like, it's just in order to be here. In order to be here, we have prepared for this many hours. We have avoided preparing for this many hours. We have, whatever the case is, we will rebound from this experience for this many days or hours. There's a crow that could fly by, a wind that could happen, the car that's wrong, the seat, somebody, like there's just so many things that I can't slow down my reaction time in processing all of that to explain them to you. So I just look like a hovering lady who's trying to control too many things, and that's why my kid's probably out of her gourd. It's not like that. Like, I just wish you could understand. I wish people could see the thought cloud above being with Celie in the world, much less out in the world.
I will say that the few people we do things with, the ones that don't have autistic children, I'm very fortunate. Like, my girlfriend Terry Lynn has 3 neurotypical children, and she's always like the first one when we walk into a restaurant. She's like, "Can you turn the music down?" Like, she knows that music needs to go down, which is really cool to kind of see. They're always like, "What can we do? Like, what is Kylie?" That kind of stuff. So that's great. We don't see a lot of other people, but what I wish the people knew in general, even I always say, like, so I never talked about autism, and then I screamed it from the rooftop, and then I withdrew in the sense of, I've always said I fundamentally changed as a person. And I think when that happens, that sort of separation of the life you had to the life you have kind of thing, you don't have a lot in common with people. And I just wish that people knew how sad I am. Does that make sense? Like, all the time. And not sad, it like just sad. And so that makes it hard to be around people because, like Jaime said, it's going back to kind of not wanting to be around people that have. I saw a meme about something about going out for lunch, and it made me think about like sitting at a table full of people that have neurotypical children. I have nothing in common with them. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I always started to feel like I was sitting outside of the table. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then there was just this deep sadness, like this heavy weight that, and I'm not comparing, and I've said this before, but it's different when you have to worry about your child's lifelong safety and care. And that's a weight that a neurotypical parent does not carry.
Just in general, whether it's with people, hanging out with people, or being in public, I do not like being judged by people at all. Mm-hmm. And I know I'm supposed to be like, I don't care what people think, we're going to do our thing. And sometimes I can be that way, but it is really hard. And it is harder when it's like people, because mm-hmm. I think I've said this before, like sometimes I almost lose respect for people because I feel like I give warnings. I obviously talk about this pretty openly, but like mm-hmm. when, we're going over to like a random family member's house, it's not like I'm texting them before and just being like, hey, this might happen or this might happen. But I'm just like, generally, Jessie has autism. Things can be unpredictable, in that way. And I think it's common knowledge. But when someone clearly has that look on their face, or even like that snap judgment that people can't control, and I'm sure I've done it to people plenty of times, it like breaks me a little bit. And I feel like that's also added to a lot of like isolation and different things where I'm just like crushed by the fact that in general, people can't give like my child the benefit of the doubt, or people are just such buttholes sometimes. And I know I can't control that. And I should be like, well, that's them. That's, not me. But it does like really hurt me. And And it is easier just to do things at home or to not go out sometimes. And so that's why I started my page. That's why I started writing. And I'm very grateful. A lot of people have reached out to me saying, like, I'll think twice before, like, I judge a parent whose child keeps throwing a tantrum at the grocery store because maybe it's something more, or, you know, things like that. But that's is part of what makes this parenting journey hard, is like the judgments and the lack of care to understand, or people who absolutely think that this is all just made up and we're just making this giant excuse up for our bad parenting. And those people do freaking exist.
The judgment. That's what I want
think
people to
that
know. Stop judging us.
gets easier as our kids age, because of the fact that I think after a certain age, people start to get more clued into the fact that, like, it's when they're 5, it looks like a bratty 5. When you have a 13-year-old acting in a certain way, I think people are more like cued into, like, there's something that's going on. And also I feel like you just, like, I pretty much become desensitized to it, but like every once in a while that stuff can bother me. But it more bothers me with stuff with people we know, I think, at this point, than people we don't know. And I wish that people could really understand, whether you know us or not, like how fast a situation could flip. Like, I feel like with Alyssa getting better over the years, and she's, you know, very calm, and she has a very sweet disposition, and she's happy a lot of the time, that they don't understand how fast that could flip and change, and like how escalated she can get so quickly without any predictors. Like, a lot of times you can, you know, a lot of times you can predict certain stuff and be like, okay, well, this might be confusing for her. She might have a hard time with this. 3 times she could be great, and that 4th time could be like a whole different situation. Because I feel like sometimes with her, people almost like doubt, like, they're like, oh, she just seems so, she's quiet, and she's, you know, she seems so happy, and it's like, yeah, she is, until she's not. And like, even just getting out of the house can be such a chore. Getting her to change her clothes sometimes can be so difficult that sometimes, like, I don't even make her do it, because it's like she gets so distressed. So it's like you're going through all these things before you step out the door, and like,
Right.
this doesn't necessarily happen as much now, but we'd always get comments like, oh, they're late again. Well, yeah, if you know what I've been through to even get this kid in the car, never mind, like, now drive, you know, the hour or whatever, wherever we are. And it's like, yeah, we also are kind of like, it's like, yeah, we are the type of people that do run a little bit late, but like sometimes it's, well, I couldn't get her to change, then I couldn't get her to get out of the house, and I couldn't get her to get her socks and shoes on, then she's screaming and crying, and then we're like, okay, do we take her out of the house like this? Do we bring her to someone else's house like this? It's like, it's such a complicated, like, thing for everything that we do, but not all the time, because sometimes it can be totally fine. So I feel like that unpredictability is just, it's even hard for us, because it's like we never know when, I just don't know sometimes what will set her off. Like, it could just be the most random thing, that it could just be like she's not ready at that time to go. Or sometimes we go to restaurants and she doesn't want to get out of the car and go in, and we're like, okay, this might not be a great, and eventually, like, most times she can like work through it, but it's just like, I don't know, it's just
Yeah,
hard.
but the
And
other
it's hard.
option is like, so then you weigh your options in the car, and then you're gonna pull out. I'll tell you what, you pull out of that parking lot with my kids' expectations in the car, you are gonna get a front of her shoe in the ear. Like, that's what's gonna happen. You can't clip it and
Well, so
reverse
like
it.
we had this incident when we drove to New Hampshire. We were going away for the weekend, and it was like a 2.5 hour drive. And then like 2 hours into the drive, we stopped at Chili's because we were hungry, and we're like, let's just stop, take a break. And Alyssa wouldn't get out of the car. We couldn't get her in the restaurant. Like, we literally had to push her across the parking lot. But I realized later that, like, she was like, why did we drive all this way to go to a restaurant? Like, what, we could have
Wasn't
went
it
to a
attached to a
restaurant.
hotel too?
No, no.
Oh, that was separate.
But like, in her mind, I think it like was like, we just drove all this way for a restaurant. Like, are you kidding me? Like, no, I'm all set. Like, in the moment, like, that's not clicking in my head, and we're just like, okay, we're all tired, we're all hungry, we just want to like get in the restaurant. And she ended up being fine, but like afterwards, I realized, I was like, she's probably like, why did we just drive like 2.5 hours, and it's like not the middle of the night, but it was probably like 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and we're like going to Chili's, which is only like 20 minutes from our house, you know.
And I think part of that too, it's like, I laughed when you were like, you know, it might be totally fine, because the more you freaking warn people, the crazier your kid makes you look, because then it goes fine. The more you're like, this might happen, you know, like, which we do anyway. Like I have talked about, like we travel a lot with family and people, and it's like, hey, we can't have necessarily set times. And if there is a set time, we might miss it. And we're not expecting everyone else to miss it. We're not like, just know that we have to be flexible in our lives. Like things could go wrong at the drop of a hat. And then of course everything will go fine because we gave that big warning. But even when things like, I was talking to my little brother about one of the days we were in London with him. And I think he knew Jesse was having a little bit of a hard time, but I'm telling you, it was like it was the day we saw Big Ben, but then we went to, I think it was that day, but we went to this park to see this Peter Pan statue that Jesse really wanted to see. And he just wanted to see that statue and then he wanted to get out of there. But we wanted to see more and walk around and just like be together. And I was talking to my little brother about that. I was like, oh, that was such a tough day. Jesse was so on edge. And he's like, oh, I didn't even notice it was that bad. Like he had a couple like mini meltdowns, but you guys probably know when your kid's like on the edge and you're like, you're
walking in tension.
Yes. And I was like, oh, he didn't even realize like how quickly that could have all crumbled because I'm holding it together. I'm like taking Jesse off to the side. We're wandering around. We're taking breaks. I'm talking him through things. I'm like buying him whatever snacks he wants. Like Isaac's like trying to help.
On edge.
We're doing all this stuff.
Billy says on edge for Seely to the outside world looks like a kid with ADHD. For Seely specifically, like a kid that's extra revved up, a kid that's like a little bit extra animated, a kid that's like a little flippy, like she's just like a little happy. It looks extra loud. We know we're walking this line and she might throw a chair. But the outside world is like, ooh, that girl's got some energy. She's busy, buzzing.
Jesse looks like business Jess. So, and that's the thing. So he's intense. He's doing it, but he's also like getting mad. He's saying he wants to get out there. He's yelling maybe every once in a while, but like overall, he's just like determined, walking, going. But like I know what's gonna happen, and Isaac does too, but we're just trying to contain that. And it's just funny how other people don't know that. I'm like, we could have been in the middle of that park with him screaming and throwing things, and you don't even know like that.
And it's like you can sense like it's like a subtle like change in their facial expression, or like it's just like these little things that are like nobody else would notice, but like we're just so, I feel like, hyper vigilant to like our children's cues. That happened to us at the airport. Like literally, like I could see that there was a volcano like building, and I'm like, nobody else could see it. Like nobody walking by would be like, oh, like, but I could see it because her body starts to react before like she reacts, which is, I mean, mostly that's the anxiety. I think it's like you just get a sense when you're like, okay, we gotta like we got to do something before they flow. And sometimes they don't. Sometimes you can keep it like right there, but it's like.
And I don't know for everyone, but for me, I wish other people knew in that moment that I'm like tunnel vision at that point. Like I'm focused on him. I'm not enjoying anything because I'm trying to like contain everything. So like you might come talk to me and I might seem like a total biatch because I kind of just like leave the conversation shortly, or I'm like not paying attention to you because I'm like
I just hold up a hand like talk to the hand 90s style, and then I'm like can't, like that's how unapproachable I am, because I'm like,
and people think you're being really rude, or they think you're, and it's like, yes, I probably am being rude, and I should maybe figure out a way to handle that better or be more open in that moment, like, hey, my son's on the edge and you can't tell, but like it's hard to put you on edge. Strangers, I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Like,
exactly, Kimmy. You're on edge.
It puts you on edge. So now you're like basically a walking, talking Jesse, like, but Jamie's version, because it's like you're ready to like pounce or like be like, okay, one of us has to get him out of here if this happens. Like you're going through all these scenarios in your mind, but like you're just watching so intently because it's like, that you're just waiting for that one thing to like, you know what I mean, to like happen.
Well, I think I told this story one other time before, but we have this big hotel near us called the Gaylord, and they do like this winter thing every winter. But like they have like a man-made tubing thing, and you have to wait in this line and you go down the tube. And we thought Jesse might like it because he really likes sledding, but I didn't even like it. It was like painful and uncomfortable and like this really hard, like, it's not like a snowy hill, it's like ice. Like anyway, we do it, and my hat fell off at some point just going down this slide, and I just look at Jesse, did not like it. I'm like, okay, I hop off my thing, I go get him off his, and I'm just walking up, and the guys behind me like, ma'am, you look like right behind me, like, ma'am, you dropped your hat, ma'am, you dropped your hat. And Isaac's like, Jamie, but I'm so like tunnel. And I think Isaac actually went and grabbed it from him because he was like in the line or something next to me. And I was like,
a Carhartt beanie is not worth it.
I don't care.
But I couldn't even, like, I swear to God, I didn't even hear the guy. I had no clue that was happening because I was like, we got to get out of here. I got to make sure Jesse doesn't like throw this thing at all these people. Like, you know, like you're just.
Yeah.
I said just for people to know how hard it is to actually get through those doors, to just show up.
Yeah.
You know, and I always joke, I'm like, even birthday parties with other autistic children, I'd literally rather stick needles in my eye, not because of those kids, because of other people. I just hate it. I hate because she stands out now. Like she's 14 in line with all the 3 and 4-year-olds at the princess house. She stands out like a sore thumb now. You know, it's sad because people have this visual reaction to things now, you know, and it's hard.
like
you want to tell people to f off.
Exactly. And you can understand in a way like, oh, I get how that looks. Like I can understand why people think a 9-year-old throwing a tantrum looks strange. I get that. And I understand those initial reactions, but they still hurt. And it's hard to see that.
I was going to say that earlier as I was listening to you, James. It's like you were saying earlier, I know I'm not supposed to care and it does hurt my feelings. It's like, for me, I'm redoing this bathroom. This is a little bit long-winded, but I promise I will circle back. I'm doing this bathroom situation right now. And I was telling Billy that it isn't about this bathroom. I mean, it is one part that you can't actually open my door all the way because this cupboard is so janky, but here nor there. Doing a project where you actually get to complete something is something that I've been needing so much in my life because our life is constantly call on this waiver, call this social worker, do this with the teacher, like do this, do that. There's never any conclusion. And within that, there's so many hiccups and hurdles and so many like potholes and things to navigate and turns in the road. And it's like, as a Rachel, now I've been super clear. I struggle with my mental health and depression has been kind of my lane for a while. But when somebody else in the outside experience, like outside of our safety of our home, says something big ass to me, it's usually something that I've thought within the last 13 minutes, days, or seconds of myself, of this predicament, because I should be doing it better. After all this time, I'm the best mom that Celia's ever had. I've been doing it every day of her goddamn life. I should have this shit dialed in. Can't you put on socks and shoes, mom? Like, just do the things. Like, that's the weight of all of these things that I have all these dials way up. It's like those moments where the public, where our friends, where our family get like caught in these moments of judgment, they're just validating my own inner dialogue that is beating a Rachel up. And so it can bring me to like almost tears because my dad's like, well, what do you mean? I'm sure she'd love to go out for ice cream. And I'm like, we can't. Blah! And I lose my mind because my daughter should be able to go out for goddamn ice cream with her grandpa. I grew up going out for ice cream with my grandpa. Like everybody goes to get goddamn ice cream, right? But we can't. And like his judgment, even though my dad is the light of my life and understands us so well, his like just catch judgment in that voice or tone hits me in all the places where I have felt the same thing in the darkness of the night. You know?
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to say that, like, so you guys obviously know already this weekend we had a family dinner and cake for her birthday. Her birthday was Wednesday. And then we only had my son and his wife come over. And then Kiara was coming, but she has, it's final exam week. So she had like an assignment due. So she didn't come till a little bit later. And she just really struggled. She got really dysregulated and just could not get herself back. And she just was very behavioral. There was like a lot of like throwing things. And I think part of what happens is like, sometimes I think we're judging ourselves in the moment. And then we kind of like project that onto other people, which obviously people judge us a lot. So that I'm not saying that people don't judge us, but I think like I'm just sitting there and I'm like, this is so obviously my kids are used to it. That's whatever. And Jasmine is awesome and she's, you know, obviously a part of the family and I view her as part of the family, but she's somewhat new to this. So it's just like, they're kind of just sitting on the couch on their phones, just kind of like ignoring it. And, you know, nobody's saying anything or making any looks, nothing like that. But like in my head, I feel like it's so awkward and it's so uncomfortable. And like, I just want her to stop. Like, we're trying to do something nice for you, which is not like realistic line of thinking. And I understand that because she does not understand that or care. But it's like, in my head, it's like, just stop. Like, why are you doing this? Like, there's no apparent reason. Like, she just kept like escalating, and I understand that she just couldn't bring herself down. And then my daughter comes and sits down and she goes, "You should have canceled this dinner." And then like, and I did cry. I went outside. I didn't cry, like my eyes filled up with tears. And it's like, you're just so torn on like, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing this for the right reason? Like she picked out all these frozen decorations and I bought them for her. I didn't even put half of them up because I knew that they were going to set her off. But and we had the tablecloth and the cake.
And she was happy 2 days earlier where you did something very similar.
Right. So basically what happened is I couldn't find a cake with Olaf on it. And then me and my sister both ended up finding a cake, like without the other person knowing. And I was like, that's fine. We can do a cake on her actual birthday, and then we can still do a cake for the family dinner. I mean, you can never have too much cake where Alyssa's concerned,
Right.
And my sister brought her balloons, and she was, I mean, I can't even describe how happy she was. Her smile was just nonstop. She was so happy. And it was such a relief to us to see her so happy because she's kind of been struggling on and off for the past, I'd even say a couple months, I guess. And it's just not necessarily that anyone's judging me, or my bitch daughter, I guess, was. but like, I feel it. It's like I'm judging myself because it's just like, why can't we just have a simple freaking dinner? Like, this is not like we have 20 people over the house. This is just,
your brother.
And I don't know if it could have even just been like, and I did very minimal cleaning because I know that sets her off. So like, I literally just cleaned off the table and like picked up a couple little things. Like I didn't try to like, do anything that, because that just sets her off too. So it's just like, it's just so hard. But I do feel like sometimes we're like, oh, please don't do this. Like, oh, whatever that might be. And so then it's like, we're immediately feeling that judgment from other people, which like, yep, a lot of times it's there, but like sometimes I think it's like also we kind of do it to ourselves because it's like
when
Jen
you
said,
feel so strongly like, oh, I've messed this up, I shouldn't have invited everybody, like, oh, how could I do 2 in a row, like, or whatever your line of your train is. It's like, I don't know, I can put that in everybody's train of thought. I can only feel that coming from everybody. It's like you get so stuck in that whirlpool of it,
Well, and also like what your daughter said to you, and your daughter's young, and like I'm sure she'll learn. You have to make a million decisions.
That's bitchy.
But you like probably what you want to say is like, of course I've already thought that. Like, thank you. Like I don't.
But it's like I didn't really. But it's like she didn't start getting like that to like. So what happened was she started getting a little antsy, and then everybody showed up. Like, which Neil was out like at the store, so like he wasn't home. He got home. My son and his wife, that stuff sounds funny to say that, they got there like probably like within less than 10 minutes from Neil. So it was just like everybody kind of came in. She was already like getting just like a little bit irritated, and it just kind of went on from there. So it's like I didn't really know ahead of time that this was going to happen.
Well, you also thought I mean, I don't know what you thought, but you could have been like, well, maybe the cake will help, or maybe like that anything could turn this around on a dime, but you don't know. But what I was getting with that is like when that stuff does happen and it all falls apart, of course in your head you're like, well, I shouldn't have done this, but I made the best decision I could at the time, and you can't control that. And I'm a master projector. Like when you said that, like that's part of my insecurity, and like why I feel judged a lot is because I am projecting that onto people. Like I'm like, oh, they're probably thinking this, or like that lady looking, when that lady might be looking like out of sympathy, or sometimes I'm looking when I see someone look and I'm trying to give that look like, girl, I'm here for you if you need anything, but it might come off as I'm being judgmental.
Or they might just be looking because they hear something and they're like, oh, what's that sound?
Exactly. It's startling. Like my kid screaming in the middle of Target is startling. But what I've learned to do, like this is what I do when I'm in those situations and I see someone, whether it's someone I know or not. And sometimes you can't say something because they're in it, but I will, if I do get a second, I say something. I'm like, keep going, girl, or whatever. And I think my message to other people, whether it's a family member, whether it's a stranger, saying something kind or giving a smile or like a you got this, like
encouraging, something encouraging,
helps that person know that you're not judging them. That takes away the projection for me when someone does that to me. When someone messages me after an event and where something went wrong and they're like, hey, I just want to know that I saw you trying your best and that has to be so hard. That changes my whole perspective on what happened,
I'll give at a girl in any grocery store. Like I'm like, I got one like that too. You're doing great. Meet me at Starbucks.
And then aren't you suddenly happy that it's actually not your kid? So then you're even like more sympathetic because like
that's
not
how I feel. Not even like for special needs, but even like when there's a little kid, I'm like, oh, I'm so glad those days are over. Or like if
Right?
it was when my kids were young, I'd be like, oh, I'm so glad they're home with their father.
I'm also in like defense mode. Like if a mom comes on a plane and she has like a crying baby, or
Yeah.
she's like, even if her kids are just fine, and like I fly Southwest a lot because it's cheap and free bags. But like if I see that a mom, I'll go sit like as long as it's like convenient for me because I have to be on the aisle because I have to pee a lot. I'll sit near that mom, or if it's full, I'll sit next to that mom and I'm just waiting. I'm like, someone around me say something about this mom. I
Yeah.
will defend her.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
I wouldn't do that for myself, but I would do it for someone else. I'd be like, shut up, leave her
The
alone.
mole for the mom. Like you're supposed to be all relaxing, but you're just ready for battle.
On guard.
Ready for a fight.
Yeah.
I got a lot of anger built up in here, people, and I will take it out on a stranger.
I said, James, I think one of your questions or the way you phrased it at the beginning is like, what do you wish people understood? And one of the things that I wish I could keep in mind is that people might understand, like people might be okay. People might not care. I generally feel like probably people don't give them any. They're not just like going home, wondering about how that Celie and that Rachel handled that thing today at the park. It's like people don't care. It's just a moment for me, like just releasing that, like, yeah, I'm projecting. Yep, they might not be. Yep, it probably doesn't matter. Yep, I don't need to take it to bed with me. Like, not that I get to go to bed.
I don't have that talent. I need that in my life. The
Well,
ability
I'm
to do
working on
that.
it. Yeah, but like it's like a constant thing. It's like I don't know. There's this reel.
Yes, that's what I was just gonna say. I remember Rachel saying this to me like 3 years ago, and I'm like, yep, that's so true. You're not that big of a deal.
Yeah. This reel says if you think it's an everybody thing, have a bite to eat. If you think you hate yourself, have a good night's rest. If you think like it's always just the most basic and simple stuff. I've talked about that in the mental health series. I've talked about it in like Celie stuff, me stuff, like so much. It's basic. It's like probably this is a Rachel thing. Probably I haven't slept in 9 years and 7 months.
Back to the
It's
basics.
a constant work in progress. This Rachel thing.
Aren't we all? And then I thought maybe we could just go around real fast and maybe give a tip. Like if you learned anything in your parenting journey for your child with autism, like one piece of advice that you would like to give either a new parent or a parent struggling.
I have one. Don't be afraid or shy or embarrassed to ask for help when you go somewhere. Hey, listen, my daughter's autistic. Could you not sit us directly under a speaker, or we go to the airport? Hey, listen, my kid can't do these lines, or whatever it might be. Don't be afraid to ask for help. 9.5 times out of 10, you will hopefully get a kind person. I mean, I hope you get it 10 out of 10, but the chances are not always there. But usually if you ask, they will help you, which then helps your kid.
I agree. I'm not always the best at doing that, but I've gotten better at it with Jen's encouragement. So I did it at the airport last time after I filled out the TSA care thing and I never heard back. I went up to a TSA person at the airport and the guy was so nice and immediately helped me. And I just happened to approach the guy who's actually in charge of TSA care at our airport. So it all worked out, but I was very nervous. But I saw the line and I was like, I'm going to be like Jenn and I'm going to just go ask the first TSA person I see. And it worked out. It worked out.
So helpful.
Hey, listen, you can either help or you can let my kid go crazy right here. You have your choice.
I've used that line.
But you have a choice. I recommend the latter.
You may either help me or hear this thing go off. It's a siren.
It's your choice. Yeah.
I think it's important for people to understand that like our children deserve to have experiences. Our children deserve to do the things that everybody else does, even though it's a lot more challenging. And I think it takes our children a lot more time to adjust into like, how can I put it? To adjust and just to like understand the expectations for different situations. And if it goes bad, like that's okay. Like this is how they learn. If you're choosing not to do it because you need time to like, adjust to that stuff yourself, like that's fine. But like I don't think you should ever be afraid to expose your children to these situations. It's the only way that they're ever going to learn. We did that with her, and I think that's the reason that she can be so successful in the community is because like we just always try to expose her and like not letting the judgments of other people affect that and not being afraid of the judgments of other people, because I think the only failure is not trying. I think with our kids, it's not, there's going to be times that they get overwhelmed. There's going to be times that like, might be overstimulating for them. But yeah, I think they deserve to have all the experiences that everybody else has.
Amen.
Mine's kind of a little two-party. I feel like if I was to advise other moms, I would just really say to trust yourself and to say it. Like, say that you're tired to your partner or to your coworkers, or to like, just say it, own it. If you can't say it, then write it. If you can't, like, even just creative writing it in a journal takes the power from those words and helps you to kind of bring order to it. So to me, don't let it live in this like rumble fritz, like a rock tumbler in your brain. Just say it, let it out, say it, write it down, whatever it is. Then the second part for me is that if you find somebody to say that to, whatever that is, build a community, like find a community. I know that for us, it looks like these four ladies found their way and they've known each other forever now and whatever. But like, it really was serendipitous that we came together, and it's through work that we've stuck it out. It's always worth it to do that. It's worth it to have a community. Like, it's really important. I know that Jenn has done some special Olympic stuff. Jane does Miracle League. I know that that's not the same as maybe what I have with the Miracle League in Minnesota, because I'm out with those moms constantly. There's certainly a spectrum there, but a community in any way is a community that you'll be better for having. Like, it really is worth it. It's worth it for me, for Celie, for Billy, for all of us as a family. Like, it's just super important. I feel like anything that happened to us before we had you guys, we as a family had the three of you. Like, it's like we've blossomed since we're able to release all this hard shit, since we're able to laugh about all the good stuff, since we're able to like just say it all, you know. I it's changed everything for us.
Love that. Mine is self-care, get enough sleep. No, I'm just kidding.
Shout.
So what I've learned on this parenting journey, being Jesse's mom, is you have to balance, and that's really hard, what works for you and your family with the professional and not professional advice you're given and what you're told you need to do. It's really hard because you don't trust yourself as a parent sometimes. We talked about this, especially in that beginning, because for me, I don't feel like I ever really had that gut instinct of like what therapy to do, how many hours of therapy to do. Am I being a bad parent because I didn't immediately put him in speech? I didn't do this, all these things with what the professionals are saying, what you feel like you have to do, and then what isn't working for your family. So like my number one advice is like, if you feel like 40 hours a week of therapy is stressing out your kid, then cut it down. If you feel like the 20 hours of therapy isn't enough and that isn't available, whatever therapy you're doing or center, maybe supplement or add on a different type of therapy that could work for your child. If you feel like you're being pushed around from med to med, or you want to try meds, talk to a different type of professional. If your pediatrician's not helping you with that, go to a child psychologist. Like, and I know none of this sounds easy and it's more appointments, but for us, it was like pulling back on a lot of things. And I do believe that's helped my son. And even sometimes from some of those professionals, when things aren't going perfectly, we'll get the like, well, maybe you should have stuck with this, or maybe you should go back to that. And I just have to hold my ground and be like, nope, that wasn't working for us. And maybe that will work for us in the future, but it wasn't working for us. So I don't know. I feel like that's just a long-winded way of saying like, it's okay to say no sometimes. It's okay to ask for different opinions sometimes, but make it work for your family. Because even if you only have one child, sometimes the expectations the professionals are giving you are still not possible. And I truly believe that sometimes we're just overdoing it for our kids. And all the times we've had a break and we pulled back, it's been the times that we've seen all that work reveal itself in our son. And sometimes we've had to go back to those therapies after the break. But within those breaks, we've been like, wow, we did this. And we couldn't see that progress because we were so caught up in always doing things, like always doing appointments and different things, that we didn't have a chance to see the progress. So let yourself see the progress, try different things if you need to, and be open and honest with like your therapists or your teachers or whoever, and just being like, this is where we're at. We're going with the flow. If it's not going to work out, it's nothing against you.
Yeah. And I think I think like going off what you said, Jaime, is you know your child better than anyone. And number two is nothing is the end all be all. I feel like we get these things in our head that are like, everyone says you have to do ABA. Everyone says you have to do speech. Everyone, or whatever it might be, like, everyone says you have to do this. And it's like, nothing's the end all be all. Like, nothing's gonna really be that, like, take your child down that much or bring them up that much, like, where it's gonna make a difference if you did it 6 months from now, or like today, like, or if you took a break for the summer, or like, or whatever, like, whatever it could be. I feel like it's just, we so badly want to try everything we can to help our children, and sometimes, like you said, sometimes that's paring back on stuff, you know. I was so happy and excited to get her into speech, and her language has blossomed more than it did when she was doing speech. And I don't necessarily think that's necessarily because she's doing speech or not. Like, it's just, you know, it's probably, her development is just growing, and it's probably going to happen either way. Of course, speech is great. I'm not saying that. I'm not trying to say that. Don't get speech therapy. Like, speech therapy is great. But I'm just saying, it's just like, I feel like sometimes, or like, you can't get your child into a service right away, you know, like, you feel like you're losing time. Like, it'll be fine. Like, whatever, like, you end up deciding will work. Or
Well,
will
there's
work.
nothing like them telling you how important it is to get your child in something right away
And
for
then
all
you
the
can't
hours.
get them in.
And then you can't get them in. It's impossible. So just also remember that too. It's like there is other things that work here. And I wholeheartedly believe a lot of those people who are telling you to do whatever, they believe in whatever that is. I'm not like saying like everyone's out to get you to try to get more money out of you, although there has been instances.
I don't know. I might have said that. I might have said
There's
that.
been moments where I feel like we've been pushed to do things longer or to add hours where it just felt weird, like they didn't feel about good enough
Just
reasons.
billable.
But I do feel like overall it's been like this person really does believe this, but some things just aren't possible. It's not possible to follow certain like strategies every day of your life, every moment. You are not a therapist. And I mean, some of you might be a therapist, but you are the parent of your child, and it's okay to be the parent of your child.
The last thing I want to say, just to piggyback off a little bit of that, is to trust your gut with a therapist. I, in the beginning, definitely tiptoed around and didn't, I wasn't the expert. Kate, they aren't either. They don't live with autism. They know it out of a textbook, and that is it. You throw them into an autism. Yeah, you throw them into a real autism situation, and I can tell you 9.5 out of 10 of those ABA therapists would not survive. 9.5 out of 10 of those ABA therapists would not be able to get out of a meltdown with one of our kids. I mean, it's a survivor.
Well, and any therapy,
or
like
they could, but it would take 6 of them at once.
Yeah.
Because
so my point to that was, I got, when I joked about the billing, like for me, that happened in like the centers where it's like they're there. When I found, I've been very open about Jackie, which was Kaya's SLP. She literally changed our lives. Finding her, and then she got us onto Chelsea, which we had Chelsea on our on our podcast, which was Kaya's OT, which then we had this relationship, and then that funneled into the feeding. So it's like, you've got to find the people that actually care about your kids. Like, yeah. Jackie was the first one that took this real interest in Kaya, and Jackie was the first person that ever said to me, "Are you okay?" And like, I started crying, like a lunatic, right? You're like someone actually, you just let it out all of a sudden. It's like those therapists, they see the parents too.
Yeah. And I think that's such a big part of our parenting journey, is finding the other people that work with us in our lives, like finding the good fit, which other parents don't have to do as much. Like, yes, there might be a coach, or your kid might be in some sort of therapy for another reason. But most parents, it's like, you don't need assistance parenting. And that's basically what those therapies are for us. Like, obviously our children have disabilities and they're helping them manage those and all that stuff, but we have to let other people in, and it's okay to like find a good fit. And sometimes like we've had therapists that I wasn't sure at first about, and then like they worked really good with Jesse. They just weren't like good with parents, and that was fine. Like different things like that. Or, like some speech therapists aren't really good at working with kids on the spectrum. They're good at their job with typical kids, and just different things like that. And I think a big part of that too is the fear of losing a therapist, because you're gonna have to go back on a wait list. And I know that managing all that and juggling all that is such a task for us. Anywho, thanks everyone for listening to Snow Res. If you have any questions about parenting autism or how we do things, we are not experts, but we're experts in our children, kind of, when we think we are. But feel free to ask us any questions. You can message us. And does anybody have a one last thing they would like to get off their chest? I can go on about my current problem. I have watched every episode of Traitors available to me from the UK,
Girl.
the US, and New Zealand. I would really like to watch the Canada version, which is crazy to me because it's right there, right above us.
Why don't we have
I do it.
access?
It's not.
Do I need to just plug you in and like you just like sit up
Yes.
my MacBook
And
and
just
like
to like put her phone on. It's on like
What?
the C, what do you guys call it? CTV or something.
TV? Yeah.
And I have to get like a VPN thing or something to do it. And I was asking my brother, I'm like, how do I do this? I have a Traitors problem. But I'm an addict. But I'm all caught up now and everyone's filming their new seasons. And I'm like, I gotta watch Canada's.
I'm going to piggyback because you took me down with you in the Traitors. And I am to the place where I need to start listening to the podcasts of the people. Like, I don't know. Should I be searching their names? I'll send you what I find. But one last thing, it's fantastic. And if you're into that thing where you disassociate to get through days or nights, I think it's very recommendable. Like, I very much recommend disassociating, like me and Jane have with Traitors. Get a snack.
And you might get addicted and watch every freaking episode available
Yeah,
on the Peacock.
probably actually. And then get at us.
Yeah. And then I would like to go on a retreat one day, rent a giant mansion, and play Traitors all together.
Yeah. I concur. I hope we have the wardrobe that everybody else does.
Anyone else?
I just can't believe I have a 28-year-old. Like, that's just mind blowing. Mind blowing.
Well, you did have one before, but now you
Now he's gonna be 31.
He's
This is my last time. I only have less than a month, and I'll have not even a teenager. 20, 22, 28, and 31 this year. It's
Well, if she sits down next to you and sasses you again, she might not make it.
yeah, literally. It was so
Well,
funny because we're talking about like age, like me and my husband are 5 years apart. So we're talking about age differences. And my son goes, yeah, that'd be like Lexi dating a 23-year-old. How would you react to that? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, I'm like, no, I think your math's wrong. He's like, no. And I'm like, she's gotta be 20. He's like, what? This is my son. He's like, she's gonna be 20? Like, when did that happen? He's like doing the math as she's 18. It was just so funny.
You left after Thanksgiving dinner the other year.
You never come back.
2 years have happened since then. She's 20.
Yeah, literally. I know. It's so funny though. It's like, and Neil will be like, they're all adults. And Lexi's like, I'm still a teenager. That's her little like line that she has. But like, he's like, oh, your days are numbered. Your days are numbered.
I went to Costco again.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't spend $300. I spent $292.98. And I said to the girl, I did not spend $300. And like, I don't know if she was just really tired, but she like literally could not stop laughing. I'm like, it really wasn't that funny. It was like just a couple bucks off $300. Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, everybody. We'll
have a great week.
Have an episode coming out next.
Sometime.
Something's coming. You stay tuned.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Talk Like a Mother Parenting Autism podcast. If you are enjoying our podcast, make sure to rate and review us wherever you listen. And if you'd like to support us, you can become a subscriber. Just check out the description of this episode. Give us a follow on Facebook and Instagram for more content, and we'll see you next time.